Can we see me? Can we hear me? We actually should be able to hear me better because I turned up the volume, basically, on the mic the way I had before I got a new cord for it. Something about getting a new cord for it reverted it back to all its old settings. So it wasn't until like yesterday that I realized it wasn't quite as loud as it was supposed to be. So it should be back to normal. Presuming you can hear me in the first place. You should be able to, though. It looks like it. Oh, did it? Did the stream really start mid-sentence? I always try to wait long enough, and it's never exactly clear of when it picks up and when it's still going live. It looks like it tells you. It doesn't really tell you. It's a little wibbly wobbly, but that's fine. So, since it looks like you can see me and you can hear me, I'm Brittany, this is Wei Ying, and welcome to Gaywatch, where we watch gay things. Today we continue making our way through Dao Zu Shi Volume 4. We were on page 193. I think we were somewhere around the middle of the page. Actually, if anyone who was here on Tuesday is able to and can help me out, did we actually stop on Dead Silence Filled, the Demon Quelling Cave? If somebody could confirm that while we give the people a couple of minutes to get the notification, hop on in, we all know how this goes. So in the meantime, what do I usually tell you guys? ADD, I don't form habits. I've seen the show. I have not read the book, which means this is a reading reaction and not some kind of like story time prepared thing. So just be aware that that's the kind of chaos you're signing up for. It's not even remotely professional at all. It's really not. It's a fun time though. It's a really good time. I have a blast. People seem to enjoy it. We have a good time. It's just more chaotic than you would think. Also, I have a bit of a cough from childhood, I almost said amnesia. Childhood asthma. Ooh, this stream's gonna get real interesting. Childhood asthma. I have a lingering cough. Sometimes it matters, sometimes it doesn't. When it does, I angle my face away from the mic as much as possible, but in general, it's just something we all gotta live with. So, was there anything else to kind of bring up before we really dive in? That seemed to go pretty fast. So let's give him another couple of minutes. Just like another 2. Let's see. Beyond Cloud just dropped like umpteen million announcements the other day. Like, we got a release month for the Mile and Appo film that they already showed us a teaser for last year. We got 2 more series coming at us with the other 2 pairings from Kin Porsche. Like, they just dropped all the things on us, and 2023 was already looking like it was going to be really good from a queer shipper's perspective. And now it just kind of looks obscene. So I'm extremely excited for that. We don't even really have details on much of anything, and I'm still hyped beyond all belief. So, just in case you hadn't heard the news yet, all of that happened, and it was like really recently. I think it was like a couple days ago. All right. So 193. Oh, thank you, Anala. It was after thank you for what on 193. Let me find it. We must have been, oh yeah, we were a little bit above that. See, yeah, it seemed like I was thinking I was going to start a little bit farther than we actually did. Thank you, Anala. Okay. So the actual starting point on 193 is closer to the top. We're at thank you for what? And we usually get through about 40 pages. That's the goal. in order to be able to do this in 8 sessions over the course of a month. And we had just done the whole demon quelling cave. It's an onslaught. Most people are without their spiritual power because there's kind of a little conspiracy going on that Wei Wuxian figures out. Then they have to fight a bunch of basically zombies. And then there was a scene that wasn't in the show, that was in the book, that was really emotional and heartbreaking. And that's literally where we ended. Like, the end of the heartbreaking scene is literally on page 192. Whew. So, pardon me. Alrighty, towards the top of 193. Let's see if we can get out of the cave in this session. Thank you for what? A cold voice came suddenly from the crowd. Lan Shizhui and the others turned their heads. The one who had spoken was Feng Manchen. What the heck is this? He demanded furiously, standing up. Lan Shizhui was confused. What the heck is what? Wei Wuxian and Lan Wangji gazed towards him as well. I'm asking you, what the heck is this? Feng Manchen harshly demanded. Atonement? You cannot actually be feeling grateful to him. Dead silence filled the demon quelling cave. Not so much as a whisper could be heard. Everyone was upset and struggling to take things in. They had come with great fanfare to launch a siege, but ultimately been the ones besieged. They had shouted at the top of their lungs that they were here to stamp out evil, but in the end they had to rely on evil to save their own lives. They didn't know if they should call this absurd, bizarre, awkward, or baffling. All they knew was that in this grand theater of righteous indignation, they, who had jumped up and down so furiously, hadn't been honorable in the least. That was a very satisfying couple of paragraphs. It felt far too outrageous to tell Wei Wuxian that they were grateful to his face. But he had saved them, after all, so it also didn't seem appropriate to tell him they weren't grateful. Given the circumstances, the best action was apparently maintaining their silence. When no one answered him, Feng Manchen fumed even more and then lunged with his sword. Did you think making a show of repentance with a few good deeds could repay the blood debt you owe? Wei Wuxian dodged his attack. Someone from the crowd tried to mediate. Feng Sheng, don't get so riled up, just forget it. The moment the man said that, he immediately realized he'd misspoken. Sure enough, Feng Manchen's eyes flashed red. Forget it? What do you mean, forget it? Can my family's murder be forgotten just because you said so? He continued with a booming voice. Wei Wuxian killed my parents. That is the truth. So why does he suddenly seem to be everyone's hero? Can his actions be so easily forgotten once he does a few good deeds? What do my parents count for, then? Within the crowd, Jinling clenched his fists. There was a sudden twinge of pain in his shoulder. It was Zheng Cheng, who was gradually tightening the fingers of the hand he had laid there. Jinling couldn't see his expression, but he called out to him in a whisper. Juju. Zheng Cheng let out a grim, indiscernible chuckle. Wei Wuxian spoke up. What exactly do you want, then? Feng Manchen blinked, and Wei Wuxian continued. What do you want? You want nothing but to see me meet a miserable end so you can satisfy your hatred. That's all. He pointed at, ooh, that's spoken like a man who has done that. Like, literally, like that. That is, wow, I don't know. Maybe that's not so much growth. That's kind of a combination of, like, growth and perspective, right? He pointed at Yu Weichun, who remained unconscious in the crowd. He lost a leg. I was torn to shreds. You lost your parents, but my family's long dead. I am but a stray dog, driven from my home. I never saw a single grain of my parents' ashes. Do you still hate the Wen survivors? The evil Wen survivors you all spoke of already died once, 13 years ago. And just now, right here, for my sake, for the sake of saving you, they died again. This time they're gone for good. Poof. So please enlighten me. What more do you want? Feng Manchang glared hard at him. After a while, he gritted his teeth. It's no use. Let me tell you, Wei Wuxian, no matter what you do, don't expect me to forgive you, or forget the murder of my parents. He raised his voice to shout, declaring, I never will! No one's telling you to forgive me, Wei Wuxian said. You're not the only ones who remember what I've done. I remember too. You won't forget. What makes you think I will? As they stared at each other, Feng Manchang felt himself grow discouraged. Mixed emotions swirled within him. Wei Wuxian and his gang had indeed saved his life, but he was reluctant to let go of his grudge for the sake of that alone. And yet, even if he wanted to seek revenge on Wei Wuxian, he lacked the power and strength to do it. In the end, he could only let out a loud yell before turning around and storming out of the demon-quelling cave. Once he was gone, someone spoke up. There won't be any more waves of corpses coming, right? Are we safe for real this time? The crowd's heads spun at the sound of that voice. Him again? Ni Huasong looked around. Seeing no one answer him, he added, Then does that mean we can go now? That question was certainly the right one. No one could wait to pin wings to their backs and fly home on their swords. 4 hours must have passed by now, one of the female cultivators said. How far have people's spiritual powers recovered? A number of people took out talismans to confirm whether they could ignite them with their spiritual powers. One after the other, the talismans were feebly set alight, and they called out their answers to the question that had been posed. Mine is around 20% recovered. 10% for me. It's coming back so slowly. When they'd first set out on this expedition, they'd all thought the campaign would exceed the first siege of the burial mounds that had taken place 13 years ago. They had been certain it would be a tragedy for the history books. And yet, the number of people descending the mountain would ultimately be much the same as the number who had ascended. This second siege certainly would be recorded in the history books, not because it was tragic, but rather because it was absolutely the most ridiculous, the most hilarious, and the most nonsensical campaign the cultivation world had ever conducted. Ooh! Ooh! Oof. Some were just thankful to have made it out alive, while others marveled at the winds of change. Several dozen clan leaders gathered together, and after a brief discussion, came to a unanimous agreement. To avoid unnecessary complications or unforeseen incidents, they would find a safe location to rally and regroup until everyone had recovered at least 80% of their power. Only then would they return to their own respective clans. It took Wei Wuxian no time at all to realize that the closest safe location to Yiling was, of course, the domain of the Jang clan of Yangmeng. So you guys are planning on heading to Lotus Pier? He asked. Lan Qiren was leery. Why do you ask? No reason, I'm just asking, Wei Wuxian said. Can I tag along? Wei Wuxian, Sect Leader Yao exclaimed warily. You may have done a good deed today, but that's an entirely different matter. Let us be clear, it is impossible for us to associate with you. Wei Wuxian was rendered speechless. Don't you worry, no one's forcing you to associate with me. But we're technically on the same side right now, no? The big shot who plotted to murder all of you today has the Yin Tiger tally in his grasp. Think you guys can handle it? The clan leaders traded looks of dismay. Truthfully, Wei Wuxian was not wrong. If he was willing to join their alliance, he would surely be a great help. But they'd all been calling for the death of the Yiling Patriarch for so many years, they couldn't suddenly or easily swallow their pride and work with him. Lan Wangji turned to Lan Qiren. Shufu, is there any news of my elder brother? No, Lan Qiren replied after a brief silence. Zhou might still be under Jing Guangyao's control, Wei Wuxian said. Lan Shensheng, every bit of help counts. Even if you have your concerns about me, at least let Han Wenjun participate in what you plan to do next. This concerns his elder brother, after all. With a weary look on his face, Lan Qiren said to Lan Wangji, Come if you must. The rest of the group immediately turned their eyes to Zhang Cheng. Lan Qiren was the most distinguished elder of the three clans present, and he had made his stance known. Taking Ni Huasong's support for any side into consideration would be a waste of time, so all eyes were now on Zhang Cheng. He stood at the other end of the cavern, engaged in channeling his spiritual power anew to test Zidian. Its current was sporadic, sometimes sparking to life, sometimes dimming, but at least it wasn't completely dead. Purple light illuminated Zhang Cheng's face, making him appear cryptic and unreadable. Everyone knew that sect leader Zhang had fallen out with Wei Wuxian years ago and could hardly stand the sight of him. They thought he would put an end to the discussion, but to their surprise, Zhang Cheng only sneered. You dare return to Lotus Pier? Having tossed out that random question, he said nothing more. Everyone was left baffled, unsure whether that was a yes or a no, but when the group set off and Wei Wuxian and Lan Wangji joined their ranks, Zhang Cheng didn't spare them a single glance. They took that to mean he neither agreed nor disagreed. Shit. That's the end of part 1 of chapter 19. We are on page 199 for the start of part 2 of chapter 19. Night had fallen by the time the group reached the foot of the mountain. When they returned to town, the lights had been extinguished, and it was quiet all around. Everyone was in a sorry state, drained in both body and spirit. Even their marching formations were wobbly and askew, the rows uneven. But after using the last vestiges of their strength to do a head count, they were heartened to find their numbers had hardly changed from when they first set out. Since most of the group hadn't fully recovered their spiritual powers, they couldn't ride swords. Travel by water was the fastest route to Lotus Pier, so the travel-weary band of thousands headed toward the harbor near Yiling. But because the decision to set off had been made on such short notice, not many boats could be rounded up quickly enough. The clan leaders had to rent every single boat at the docks, regardless of size, even fishing boats. They stuffed the vessels to full capacity with the various clans' disciples and set off down the river. Dozens of juniors from prominent clans had all been squeezed onto one fishing boat. The boys, raised in prestigious households, had never been forced onto such a decrepit, creepy vessel. The boat was old and dismal, piled everywhere with filthy nets and buckets that reeked of fish. The wind was stronger at night, making the boats rock up and down and side to side. Several boys who hailed from the dry north came down with bad cases of queasiness, and though they tried to endure it, could eventually no longer hold it in. They all dashed out of the cabin and heaved before slumping back into dizzy heaps on the deck. Ugh, for heaven's sake, one of the boys complained. All this rocking is raising waves in my stomach. Hey, Sujui's Chong. You're throwing up too? Aren't you from Gusu? You're not a northerner, so why are you puking even harder than me? Lan Chijui waved dismissively, looking sickly green. I don't know why either. I've been like this since I was 4 or 5. Every time I'm on a boat. Maybe I was born this way. As he spoke, queasiness surged within him again. He pulled himself upright with the support of the boat railing. Just as he was about to vomit some more, he suddenly saw a pitch-black figure clinging to the boat just below the railing. Half the man's body was submerged in the river water, and he was staring straight at Lan Chijui. Oh, creepy! Let's not do that! Where the fuck did that come from? In that split second, Lan Chijui was so scared he swallowed back down everything he was about to vomit. His hand had just reached the hilt of his sword when he managed to take a closer look. Ghost, he gasped. Inside the cabin, Jinling caught that word and charged out, wielding his sword. Where's the ghost? Where? I'll kill it for you. It's not a ghost, Lan Shijui explained. It's the ghost general. Oh, thank God, okay. The boys swarmed onto the deck and looked where Lan Shijui was pointing. Sure enough, the ghost general, Wen Ning, was the shadowy black figure who clung to the boat just below the railing, visible from where they stood. Wen Ning had vanished after they had descended the burial mounds. Not one of them had expected him to be silently clinging to the fishing boat for who knows how long. While Wen Ning had fought alongside them back at the burial mounds, there had been a lot of people and many elders around. But it was the middle of the night now, and they were by themselves on the water. Wen Ning's sudden and frankly bizarre appearance gave the boys a fright. Both parties stared at each other, stunned. Ouyang Zhijian was the first to shrink back. Why did the ghost general come to us on his own? He said, sitting on the deck. No wonder the boat was going so slow, one of the boys grumbled. It was because there's extra dead weight weighing us down. Why, is he clinging there? Whatever the reason, it's definitely not to hurt us. Otherwise, he wouldn't have protected us during the day at the burial mounds. But there's no danger now, so why did he come find us again? What are you laughing about, Jingyi? Look at him, Lan Jingyi said through his laughter. He looks like a big sea turtle, the way he's clinging to the side of the boat and not moving. Now that he mentioned it, some of them realized Wen Ning really did resemble a big sea turtle. They didn't laugh, however. He's coming up, Ouyang Zhijian exclaimed. Sure enough, Wen Ning had pulled himself out of the water and was slowly climbing up, using a thick rope that dangled from the deck. The boys scattered in an instant. I don't know why, but that gave me such a perfect image of a bunch of ducklings in their robes just scattering off of the deck, just with their robes trailing behind. I don't know, man. Gave me such a perfect mental image. Oh, so much so I lost my place. There we are. A few of the more timid ones ran around the deck in panic, their feet stomping heavily on the boards as they screamed at random. He's coming up, the ghost general is coming! What's there to be scared of? Lan Jingyi asked. It's not like we've never seen him before. What do we do? Should we call people over? When a dripping Wen Ning flipped over the railing and landed heavily on the deck, the entire fishing boat seemed to rock. The boys were extremely nervous, wishing desperately they could shift to the other side of the deck. Their hearts were pounding, but they were too abashed to raise a sword against him. Wen Ning stared intently at Lan Shijui's face, then started to walk toward him. Lan Shijui, sensing he was here specifically for him, steadied himself. What is your name? Wen Ning asked him. Lan Shijui was slightly taken aback, then stood tall. I am a junior of the Lan clan of Gusu. My name is Lan Yuan. Lan Yuan? Wen Ning repeated. Lan Shijui nodded. Do you know who gave you that name? Wen Ning then asked. The dead could not form facial expressions. Maybe it was only Lan Shijui's imagination, but Wen Ning's eyes seemed to light up. He also thought Wen Ning looked excited enough to be stumbling over his words. It was making him excited as well, as if a secret that had been sealed for years was about to be revealed. My name was, of course, given to me by my parents, Lan Shijui answered carefully. Then your parents are still alive and well? Wen Ning asked. My parents passed away when I was very young, Lan Shijui replied. One of the boys tugged on Lan Shijui's sleeve and whispered, Shijui, don't say too much. Watch out for tricks. Wen Ning blinked. Shijui? Shijui is your courtesy name. Yes, Lan Shijui confirmed. Who gave it to you? Wen Ning asked. Hangwan Jun, Lan Shijui said. Wen Ning lowered his head and silently recited the name Shijui to himself a few more times. Seeing some sort of understanding dawn on him, Lan Shijui asked about it. He was about to call him General, but felt it sounded strange and chose another address. Mr. Wen, is there something... My name... Ah, Wenning looked up and scrutinized his face. What he said next did not answer the question. You look a, a lot like one of my distant relatives. This sounded very much like the kind of excuse a low-level cultivator or a non-blood related sect disciple would use to try and cozy up to the juniors of the main household. The group of boys were growing more and more mystified, not knowing what to make of this. Lan Shijui didn't know how to respond either, so he only replied, "Really?" "Yes," Wenning confirmed enthusiastically. He tried hard to lift the muscles at the corners of his lips, as if wanting to squeeze out a smile. For some reason, the way the ghost general was acting seemed grievously familiar to Lan Shijui. A vague thought surfaced in his mind. He had seen this face somewhere before. There was a form of address on the tip of his tongue. If he could only blurt it out, many other things would follow, and everything would become clear. But at that moment, he saw Jinling. Jinling's face was dark. He looked extremely upset. His grip on his sword tightened and slackened fitfully, just as the veins on the back of his hand came and went. Only then did Lan Shijui remember that the ghost general Wenning, who seemed so harmless, was the one who had murdered Jinling's father. Following his gaze, Wenning's smile also gradually vanished. He slowly turned toward Jinling. "Jinru Langgongji." "Who's that?" Jinling replied coldly. Wenning fell silent for a moment, then changed his greeting. "Jinling Xiaogong." Hoo. I almost got it. I got so close. "Jinling Xiaogongji." There we go. Jinling stared hard at him, while the other boys stared nervously at Jinling, afraid he was about to act rashly. "Jingongji," Lan Shijui started. "Move. This has nothing to do with you," Jinling stated. But Lan Shijui could tell this might not be entirely unrelated to him. He stepped in front of Jinling and blocked his path. "Jinling, put your sword away first." Jinling was already tense as a taut string. With his vision now obstructed, he snapped without thinking, "Don't block me!" He shoved Lan Shijui. Already queasy and unsteady on his feet, Lan Shijui crashed into the railing and almost toppled into the river's pitch-black waters. Thankfully, Wenning pulled him back just in time. The boys immediately scrambled over to give Lan Shijui a helping hand. "Shijui-shang!" "Langgongji, are you alright? Are you still nauseated?" Wenning grew distressed at the sight of Lan Shijui's blanched face. "Jingongji, please attack me instead. I, Wenning, will never fight back. But Lanwan Gongji." Lan Jingyi was furious. "Jinling, why are you like this?" he berated. "What did Shijui do to you?" "Shijui-shang acted in your own best interests. It's fine if you don't appreciate that, but why push him?" Jinling was also startled by the force of his own reaction at first, but the sight of his peers rushing to help Lan Shijui and turning to scold him was familiar, matching countless others in his memory. For many years, everyone said he was spoiled because he was an orphan with no one to discipline him, that he had a rotten temper and was difficult to get along with. He had no close friends his own age, whether at Golden Carp Tower or Lotus Pier. The high status afforded to him by his birth only made his situation more awkward. When he was little, there were no juniors from the prominent clans who liked playing with him. Now that he was older, there were no juniors from the prominent clans who would follow him. The more he thought about it, the more his eyes reddened. "That's right. It's all my fault," he suddenly shouted. "I'm just that terrible of a person. What are you all gonna do about it?" The other boys were stunned by his outburst. They were speechless until someone grumbled indignantly. "What? You're the one who pushed him. What are you getting mad at us for?" "So what?" Jinling spat. "You're gonna discipline me?" You know, there might be a couple of reasons why people don't like you, Jinling. I'm just saying. I don't think he's reached the age yet, though, where, you realize that kind of thing. At that age, you're just like, no one likes me and that pisses me off, Plus, it's not like he comes by it. We all know that he had a rough. We all know. Wei Wuxian and Lan Wangji were riding in the closest boat. At the sound of all that yelling, Wei Wuxian paused and then rushed outside the cabin to look at the neighboring vessel. Yeah, but what was going on in the cabin though? This is what I'm just curious. They were riding in the same boat, they were in a cabin. What were they, you know? Just a question. Hello. He immediately spotted Jinling in a face-off with the others and called over to them. What's going on? The sight of the two of them always made Lan Zhijui feel like even the most difficult situation could be resolved. Hang Wenjun, Wei Chanbei, he shouted to them, overjoyed. Come over, quick! Why is he the best boy? Oh. Because he had someone to... Woo, okay. We're not getting into that. Whew! The sight of the two of them always made Lan Zhijui feel like... Oh, sorry. I backtracked. Lan Wangji wrapped his arm around Wei Wuxian's waist and brought him onto beach end. The pair rowed the sword across to land on the other fishing boat. Wei Wuxian teetered a little, but Lan Wangji held him steady. Oh, I see you, MXTX. Don't think I don't. Just adding that little harmless detail in there. Once he was settled, Wei Wuxian asked, Wenning, what's going on? Didn't you say you were just gonna take a gander? I'm sorry, Gongji, Wenning said. It's my fault. I couldn't hold back. Jinling pointed his sword at him. Drop the act, he roared furiously. Jinling, Wei Wuxian said, put your sword down first. No, I won't, Jinling said. Wei Wuxian was about to say more, but Jinling unexpectedly burst into tears. This poor baby has so many fucking issues rattling around in his head, and he understands maybe a quarter of them? Everyone was stunned, speechless. Wei Wuxian took a step toward him, bewildered. What's wrong? Even as tears streamed down Jinling's face, his voice was loud and furious between sobs. This is my dad's sword. I'm not putting it down. He hugged Jin Zixuan's sword, Suihua, tight to his chest. That sword was the one and only thing his parents had left him. The sight of Jinling wailing aloud in front of an audience evoked something in Wei Wuxian's memory. It was almost as if he were looking at a heartbroken Zheng Yanli, weeping profusely. Some young men of Jinling's age were already married, while some who were only slightly older even had children. To them, crying was a humiliating act. One could only imagine how aggrieved Jinling was to stand there crying for all to see. Wei Wuxian was momentarily at a loss. He looked pleadingly at Lan Wangji as if wanting to ask him for help, but Lan Wangji was even less likely to have an answer. A voice suddenly rang out from across the river just then. Aling! 5 or 6 large boats surrounded their fishing vessel, each packed full of cultivators and with a clan leader standing on the bow. The Jang clan of Young Meng's boat was the closest, directly to the right of the small fishing boat, with only 16 meters between them. The voice they heard was Zhang Cheng's, and he stood at the ship's railing. The moment he saw his uncle through his teary eyes, Jinling wiped his face haphazardly and sniffled. He looked this way and that, then gritted his teeth before flying over on his sword and landing beside Zhang Cheng. Zhang Cheng grabbed him. What's going on? He demanded. Who bullied you? Jinling rubbed his eyes hard, unwilling to speak. Zhang Cheng looked up, shooting a grim glance toward the fishing boat. His cold glare swept over Wen Ning and was just about to stop on Wei Wuxian and Lan Wangji. When Lan Wangji stepped forward and, whether by accident or by design, very coincidentally, blocked his line of sight. One of the family heads warily spoke up. Wei Wuxian, what are you doing on that boat? His tone was suspicious and unpleasant. Clearly, he thought Wei Wuxian harbored evil intentions. Sect leader Yao, Ouyang Xijin said, "Why must you speak like that? If Wei Chenbei wanted to do anything, no one on the boat would be sitting here safe and sound right now." Many of the older cultivators felt a touch of embarrassment at his words. Although it was the truth, no one wanted to hear it being voiced so bluntly. "Zijin is right," Lan Shijui immediately chimed in. Many of the boys also agreed in unison. That's because the ducklings, on a whole, mwah. Oh no, duckling love made me lose my place. Zhang Cheng cocked his head and called out, "Sect Leader Ouyang." Sect Leader Ouyang's eye twitched and his heart pounded at being named. He heard Zhang Cheng say to him in a frosty tone, "If I remember correctly, the one speaking to us right now is your son. He certainly is eloquent." "Zijin," Sect Leader Ouyang hurriedly called to his son, "Come back, come over to Dad." Puzzled, Ouyang Zijin said, "Dad, weren't you the one who told me to stay on this boat and not bother you?" Sect Leader Ouyang wiped away his sweat. "That's enough. Haven't you made enough of a splash today? Come here right now." His sect was based in Baling, which was close to Yangmeng. He couldn't possibly compete with the Zhang clan's power and influence, and he had no desire to get in Zhang Cheng's bad books just because his son kept speaking up for Wei Wuxian. Zhang Cheng threw a glare at Wei Wuxian and Lan Wangji before returning to the cabin with his arm around Jinling's shoulders. Sect Leader Ouyang breathed a sigh of relief and yelled at his son again. You only grow more disobedient the older you get. Are you coming over or not? If not, I'm coming over to nab you myself." "Dad, you should go back inside the cabin and rest up, too," Ouyang Xijin urged with concern. "Your spiritual power hasn't recovered yet. I'm sure there's no way you can come over. Don't try to ride your sword so rashly, okay?" Wow. The majority of the cultivators were still in the process of recovering their spiritual power. If they tried to force themselves to get rid of their swords, if they tried to force themselves to ride their swords, they might just plummet headfirst to the ground, which was, of course, why they'd had to travel by boat to begin with. Sect Leader Ouyang was also notably tall and burly, and given his weight, it really wasn't possible for him to fly over and nab his son. He was so infuriated by the boy that he stormed off to the cabin in a whirl of sleeves. From another boat, Ni Huasong laughed out loud. The other clan leaders looked at him speechless, but those who should be dispersing began to do so. On seeing this, Wei Wuxian heaved a long sigh of relief. A look of extreme weariness suddenly spread across his face, and he tilted to one side. Apparently, his unsteadiness earlier wasn't because he'd been off balance on the fishing boat, but because he was simply too exhausted to remain on his feet. Unbothered by the blood and filth he was covered in, the boys scrambled over to help support him, as they had just done with Lan Shijui. But there was no need for them to do so. Bending slightly at the waist, Lan Wangji placed an arm around Wei Wuxian's shoulders, another under his legs, and picked him up in one swoop. Is this the princess carry we deserved? I think it is. He carried Wei Wuxian into the cabin like that. There were only 4 long wooden benches inside, and no place to lie down. Lan Wangji wrapped an arm around Wei Wuxian's waist and let his head rest on his shoulder. With his other hand, he pushed and pulled the 4 benches together to make a surface wide enough to lie on, then gently settled Wei Wuxian there. Lan Shijui suddenly noticed that even though Hang Wanjun was drenched in blood, the bandage Wei Wuxian had torn from his own sleeve to dress a small wound on the fingers of his left hand was still securely knotted in place. Thus far, Lan Wangji had been too preoccupied to bother with appearances. Only now did he take out his handkerchief and use it to slowly wipe the coagulated blood from Wei Wuxian's face. Stop it! It didn't take long for the snow-white handkerchief to be stained shades of black and red, and despite having cleaned Wei Wuxian's face, he had yet to wipe his own. Lan Shijui hardly presented his own handkerchief. Hang Wanjun. Lan Wangji took it and lowered his head. One swipe of the handkerchief left a field of snowy white in its wake. The boys were then able to breathe a sigh of relief. It was true. Hang Wanjun only looked normal with a face of ice and snow. Hang Wanjun, Ouyang Zijin asked, why did Wei Chunbei collapse? He is tired, Lan Wangji answered. Lan Jingyi was astonished. I thought Wei Chunbei could never tire. The other boys were similarly shocked, finding it inconceivable that the legendary Yiling patriarch could collapse from exhaustion after dealing with walking corpses. They all thought the Yiling patriarch could settle everything with a mere snap of his fingers. That's what I freaking love about this. Right? They grow up with all of these rumors and stories of Wei Wuxian, but then, like, when they spend time in his actual vicinity and they witness that, like, so much of that is bullshit, they actually acknowledge what their eyes freaking see, and they're like, oh, clearly he's not what the stories purport him to be. They are more adult than the adults that raised them. I'm just saying. Whew. Righteous indignation made me lose my place. There we are. Lan Wangji, however, shook his head. We are all human, he stated simply. They were all human. What human would not tire, and what human would never collapse? That speaks so much to all of the gossip literally designed to make Wei Wuxian as inhuman as possible. It's fine, I'm fine, I'm fine. Lan Wangji had pushed all the long benches together, so the boys could only crouch in a circle and look on helplessly. If Wei Wuxian had been awake, the cabin would have been alive with his wisecracking and his glib tongue teasing everyone in turn. But no, he just had to be down for the count. Which left only Hang Wangjun, who sat straight as a brush beside him. Normally, someone would start chatting to liven up the atmosphere, but no one dared say a word when Lan Wangji wasn't speaking. Even after they'd been squatting there a long time, dead silence still prevailed inside the cabin. The boys grumbled to themselves. How boring. They were so bored that they started communicating with their eyes. Why isn't Hang Wanjun saying anything? Why has Wei Chunbei still not woken up? Cupping his cheeks with both hands, Ouyang Zijin pointed here and there to express himself. Is Hang Wanjun always this silent? How can Wei Chunbei stand being around him all day? Lan Shijui gave a grave nod of his head in soundless confirmation. Hang Wanjun certainly has always been this way. Suddenly, Wei Wuxian frowned and tilted his head. Lan Wangji gently moved his head back in place, lest he sprain his neck. Lanzhen, Wei Wuxian mumbled. Everyone was overjoyed, thinking he was about to wake up, but Wei Wuxian's eyes remained tightly shut. Lan Wangji, on the other hand, looked as he usually did. I am here. Wei Wuxian said nothing else. He nuzzled against Lan Wangji as if feeling safe and reassured, and continued to sleep. No. The boys stared blankly at the two of them. Then, for some reason, they suddenly blushed. Lan Shijui was the first to stand up. Hang Wanjun, we will go outside for a bit, he stammered. They practically fled out onto the deck. Only when the night breeze blew against them did that awful, suffocating feeling dissipate. What the heck? Someone said. Why did we have to rush out? Why? Yang Zijian covered his face. I don't know why either, but I suddenly get the feeling it was really inappropriate to stick around in there. They pointed at each other and cried accusations. What are you blushing for? I'm blushing because you're blushing. Wen Ning hadn't gone over to help support Wei Wuxian in the first place, nor follow them into the cabin. Instead, he crouched on the deck outside. The boys had found this strange at first, wondering why he didn't go in. It was only now that they realized just how wise the Ghost General truly was. There was absolutely no room for anyone else in there. I'm okay. Wen Ning seemed to have expected them to come out, because he made room for them to crouch with him. However, only Lan Shijui walked over and did so. The other boys muttered among themselves on the other side of the deck. Why does Shijui seem to be on familiar terms with the Ghost General? Lan Gongji, can I call you Ayuan? Wen Ning asked. The boys were inwardly horrified to think the Ghost General is so forward. However, Lan Shijui answered him with delight. Sure! Ayuan, have you been doing well all these years? Wen Ning asked. You can't do this. You can't veer from Wangji and Wuxian over to Best Boy and Wen Ning. You can't do that to me. I'm like literally fucking dizzy. You can't. Why would you do that to me? Very well, Lan Shijui answered. Wen Ning nodded. Heng Wanjun must have treated you very well. Hearing the respect in his tone when he mentioned Lan Wangji made Lan Shijui feel even closer to him. Heng Wanjun treats me as a brother and a father would. He was the one who taught me to play the guqin. When did Han Wangjun start raising you? Wen Ning asked. Lan Shijui pondered for a moment, then answered, I don't remember. Probably when I was 4 or 5 years old. I don't have many memories of my childhood, but Heng Wanjun probably couldn't have been the one taking care of me when I was younger than that. He seemed to have been in seclusion for many years at the time. It suddenly occurred to him that the first siege of the burial mounds had taken place at the same time as Heng Wanjun's seclusion. Inside the cabin, Lan Wangji glanced at the door the juniors had closed when they rushed out, then looked down again at Wei Wuxian, whose head was tilting to the side once more. His eyebrows were knitted, and he seemed very uncomfortable, tossing and turning his head. Seeing this, Lan Wangji stood up and walked to the door to bolt it before returning to sit beside Wei Wuxian. He pulled Wei Wuxian upright by the shoulders and let him gently rest in his embrace. But Lan Wangji, not being a fool, was like, here, let me stop the boys from being able to get in here before I cradle you adoringly. With this change of position, Wei Wuxian's head finally stopped flopping back and forth. He burrowed into Lan Wangji's chest and eventually found a comfortable position to sleep in. Seeing him settle down, Lan Wangji lowered his head to get... It's okay, it's fine. I can do this, it's fine. Seeing him settle down, Lan Wangji lowered his head to gaze at the face of the man in his arms. His long black hair cascaded down. All of a sudden, eyes still closed, Wei Wuxian grabbed Lan Wangji's collar. His fingers just so happened to catch hold of the tail of his forehead ribbon. He gripped the ribbon tight. Lan Wangji tugged at the ribbon tail. Not only did he fail to pull it from Wei Wuxian's grip, but his efforts made Wei Wuxian's eyelashes quiver. Not a moment later, Wei Wuxian woke up. When he slowly opened his eyes, the first thing he saw was the wooden ceiling of the cabin. He sat up. Lan Wangji stood by a wooden window in the cabin, gazing out into the distance at the luminous moon at the river's end. Hang Wanjun, did I pass out earlier? Wei Wuxian asked. Lan Wangji turned his head and answered calmly, yes. Wei Wuxian followed this with another question. Where's your forehead ribbon? Done with his questions, Wei Wuxian looked down and made a noise of surprise. Oh, how'd that happen? It's right here in my hands. He swung his legs off the long benches. So sorry about that. I like hugging something while I sleep. If I don't have anything to hug, I tend to grab things at random. My bad, okay? Here you go. Lan Wangji stayed silent a moment longer, then took the forehead ribbon he handed him. It is fine. Wei Wuxian, however, was trying so hard to suppress his laughter that he was about to suffer an internal injury. There had certainly been a moment earlier when he'd really wanted to sleep, but he wasn't quite so frail that he would faint at the drop of a hat. But who knew? He'd just teetered a little, and Lan Wangji had swept him up with incomparable haste. It made Wei Wuxian too embarrassed to say, hey, don't worry about it, I can stand on my own. And honestly, he didn't want to be set back down. Why stand when you can be carried? Wei Wuxian rubbed his neck, feeling secretly delighted and smug, even as he lamented to himself, oh, Lan Zhan is honestly... Had I known this would happen, I wouldn't have woken up. I could have lain in his arms the entire journey if I was still out cold. You oblivious motherfucker. Dear God. They arrived in Yangmeng just before dawn. An excellent place to stop for the break. Ridiculous. Ah. Dear God. Wait, where the hell? It was towards the end of... There you go. We are towards the end of page 214. Towards the bottom of page 214. Ah. His obliviousness is going to come around. At some point. It will happen. Damn it. Dear God. Okay, so that's where we're stopping. It is, well, that's where we're stopping for the break. It's 4:03. I will be back in about 10 minutes. Well, okay, now it's 4:04. I will be back in about 10 minutes. So 4:14 to 4:15, and then we will continue into the second part of this reading live stream. Go take a break, do whatever you need to do, and I will see you in about 10 minutes, all right? back to normal. Can be seen and heard for part 2. Yeah? And we will just pick right up where we left off. Actually, there was a comment. Rose said, I think he faked fainting because he liked Wang Ji holding him. I'm going to take that an extra step further, because I think he absolutely did fake faint ultimately because he liked Wang Ji holding him. But I don't think he realizes why he likes Wang Ji holding him yet. I think that's where the obliviousness comes in, you know? In my opinion, that's how I read it. That's how it hits me. So we were at towards the bottom of page 214. Yep. And so, oh god, let's see. We started at 192. You'd think I would learn to write down where we start. Yeah, 193. So we're about halfway there. We're making all right. We're making all right time. We should be able to make 40. Hang on, I think I sat back a little. Oh no, I didn't. Okay. I thought I was like sitting in a weird frame, but I'm not. So I don't have to scoot forward. All right. Towards the bottom of 214, we are arriving in Yangmeng. I know, because it says, they arrived in Yangmeng just before dawn. Lotus Pier's main gates and dock were so brightly illuminated that their reflection in the waters gleamed with golden light. The dock had rarely seen so many boats of so many sizes gathered around all at once. Not only were the guards before the gate stunned at the sight, but even the old men still selling midnight snacks at the riverside stalls were dumbstruck. Zheng Cheng was the first to disembark. He gave a few orders to the guards, and countless fully geared disciples immediately poured out of the main gates. The crowd disembarked in batches, and the guest cultivators from the Zhang sect arranged for them to enter. Sect leader Ouyang finally nabbed his son and dragged him away, lecturing him under his breath. Wei Wuxian and Lan Wangji walked out of the cabin and hopped off the fishing boat. Gongji, Wen Ning called out, I'll wait for you outside. Wei Wuxian nodded, knowing that Wen Ning would not step through the main gates of Lotus Pier and Zheng Cheng would never allow it regardless. Mr. Wen, I'll keep you company, Lan Shijui said. You will? Wen Ning exclaimed in delight. He hadn't expected that at all. With a smile, Lan Shijui said, yeah, in any case, the seniors are going to discuss important matters, so it's pointless for me to head inside. Let's continue our conversation. Where were we just now? Did Wei Chunbei really plant a 2-year-old child in the soil like he would a radish? It's fine. Although his voice was quiet, the two in front had extremely keen hearing. Wei Wuxian stumbled in his step. Lan Wangji quirked his eyebrows for a moment, but he recovered in no time. After their backs disappeared through the main gates of Lotus Pier, Lan Shijui continued in a hushed tone. That poor child. But actually, I remember Hang Wanjun once sent me down in the middle of a bunch of rabbits when I was little. The two of them are really quite similar in some respects. No, don't look at me. Where's the art? Where's the art of that? Why isn't that a page of art? Huh? That's like my one critique so far. Where's the art of Hang Wanjun setting down the best baby boy into a pile of rabbits? Where's that? Huh? How did that not warrant, imagery here? Not like I'd be able to handle it, but it would have been nice. Before they entered the main gates of Lotus Pier, Wei Wuxian took a deep breath to calm himself. But once he strode through, he found he wasn't as worked up as he expected to be. Perhaps it was because too much had been renovated. The drilling ground had been expanded to twice its size, and the upturned eaves and corners of dozens of new buildings peeked out from behind each other at varying heights. It was much more imposing and glorious than before, but it was almost unrecognizable compared to the lotus pier of his memory. That hurts for several reasons, both related to Wei Wuxian and related to Zheng Cheng. Wei Wuxian felt a sense of loss. He didn't know whether the old buildings were obstructed from view by the resplendent new ones or if they had been demolished by now. After all, they really were very old. The various sex disciples formed into square formations again on the drilling ground. They settled into the lotus meditation pose to continue to recuperate and recover their spiritual powers. After nearly a full day and night of torment, they were utterly exhausted and needed to catch their breath. Zheng Cheng led the leaders and important cultivators into the main hall of the household, Sword Hall, to discuss the day's events. Wei Wuxian and Lan Wangji followed them inside. Some found this slightly inappropriate, but there was nothing they could say about it. They had only just entered and had yet to take their seats when someone who looked like a guest cultivator hurried over to Zheng Cheng. Sect leader. He moved in close and whispered a few words into Zheng Cheng's ear. Zheng Cheng frowned. No, I will not meet them. If they have matters to discuss, it can wait for another day. Can't you read the room right now? That's what I told them, the guest cultivator replied, but the two ladies said, today's matter is precisely why they have come. Oh my god! What's their background? Which sect do they belong to? Zheng Cheng questioned. They're not from any sect, and they aren't cultivators either, the guest cultivator answered. I'm certain they are both ordinary women without spiritual power. They only just arrived today. They brought a batch of rare and expensive medicinal herbs with them, but didn't specify which clan leader sent them. All they said was that they had something to tell you. It didn't sound like a trivial matter the way they said it. I didn't want them to feel slighted, so I put them up at the guest house. The medicinal herbs have not gone into storage yet. I have inspected them for inappropriate spells and found nothing. The head of the Zhang clan of Yanmeng didn't meet with just anyone, especially when they were unwilling to reveal who they were. Even less so two ordinary women with no spiritual powers and no background to speak of. But since they had brought with them a batch of rare, expensive medicinal herbs, the guest cultivator responsible for receiving them did not dare slight them. Even without the generous gifts, the oddness of the encounter would have been enough to make him take them seriously. Ladies and gentlemen, Zheng Cheng called out for the room's attention, please make yourselves at home. Allow me to excuse myself for a moment. I will be right back. The crowd responded one after another. Of course, sect leader Zheng. However, Zheng Cheng did not come right back. In fact, he did not return for a long time. Leaving guests unattended was already a breach of etiquette, all the more so in these extraordinary circumstances, where everyone was waiting to discuss important affairs. When Zheng Cheng had still not appeared almost an hour later, many of the guests started to feel uneasy or displeased. It was then that Zheng Cheng finally returned. He had left with a neutral expression, but his face was now cold and serious. He walked swiftly and brought two people with him. They were two women, presumably the same pair that had come calling on him. At first, everyone assumed there had to be something special about these women for them to be able to come bearing such generous gifts. Unexpectedly, neither of them was young, their advanced age evident in the deep creases at the corners of their eyes and mouths. One looked meek and apprehensive, while the other was notable not just because she looked like a strumpet, but because of the 5 or 6 large, scarred slash marks across her face. The scars were old, but they looked so horrifying that the cultivators were utterly repulsed and disappointed. They began grumbling to themselves, wondering why Zheng Cheng had brought these two women to Sword Hall, even directing them to the center of the room. With a somber expression, Zheng Cheng spoke to the two women, who were taking their seats in trepidation. Tell us about it right here. Sect Leader Zheng, what do you mean by this? Sect Leader Yao asked. What I just learned from them is too appalling to describe. I did not dare act carelessly, so I questioned them at length. That is why I was delayed. Everyone, please quiet down and listen to these two. Zheng Cheng turned around and asked, which of you will start? The two women looked at each other. The woman with the weathered air of a lady of the night was more daring, so she stood up. I'll go first then. She casually curtsied to the crowd. What I'm about to tell you is an incident that happened roughly 11 years ago. Jang Chung's tone told everyone that what the woman was about to say was significant. They wondered to themselves what could have happened 11 years ago. My name is Cece, the woman began. I used to be a working girl, and I guess I was pretty popular for a while. Over a decade ago, there was this wealthy merchant I wanted to marry, but his wife turned out to be a real scary one. She hired a gang of burly brutes to cut up my face, and that's how I got like this. The woman spoke without shame and didn't mince her words. As she went on, some female cultivators covered their mouths with their sleeves, and some male cultivators frowned. With my face like this, life was no longer the same, Cece continued. No one was willing to spare me a glance, let alone hire me to do my business. My original brothel threw me out. I have no other skills and couldn't find customers anywhere, so I partnered up with some older sisters in the same line of work. Their customers didn't demand much, and if they got any jobs, they would bring me along with them. As long as I covered up my face, I could make it work. At this point, some of the cultivators couldn't take it anymore. The naked contempt in their eyes blazed forth, stark and undisguised, for all to see. Some didn't understand why Jang Chung wanted the crowd to hear this woman speak publicly of her salacious past. The clan leaders, however, kept their cool and waited for her to continue. Sure enough, Cece arrived at the point. One day, my sisters who worked out of the same alley as me suddenly received a job. They hired over 20 of us and took us to the location in a horse carriage. After discussing the pay, my older sisters were thrilled to bits as they sat in that carriage, but I felt something wasn't right. To put it bluntly, everyone there was either old and faded like a yellowing pearl or scarred like me. But we were paid so much money and paid in advance to boot. Wasn't it too good to be true? What's more, the person who sought us out was awful secretive and sneaky. He pulled up, loaded everyone right into the carriage, and whisked us away without letting anyone else see. No matter how you looked at it, he didn't seem like he meant well. The others in the room thought so as well. Their initial contempt had been replaced with curiosity. When the carriage arrived at the destination, it drove directly into a courtyard and let us off there, Cece continued. None of us had ever seen such a tall, glorious house. We were so dazzled by the sight that we didn't even dare breathe. There was a boy leaning against the doorway, fiddling with a dagger. When he saw us, he told us to enter before closing the door behind us. We went inside, and in that huge house there were only 2 people. There was a man lying under a brocade quilt on the bed. He was about 30 or 40 years old and looked so sick that he was basically half dead. When he noticed us enter, he could only move his eyes. Oh, someone in Sword Hall suddenly exclaimed in shock as realization dawned. 11 years ago, that's... Someone had instructed us beforehand about what we should do. Every single one of us was to pleasure the man on the bed to the fullest extent of our skills, without even a moment's pause, Cece continued. I'd been expecting some kind of extraordinarily manly guy, not an invalid. Would he even survive us? He'd probably drop dead 2 rounds in. How could someone be such a sex maniac? Besides, they were rich. It's not like they couldn't afford young and pretty girls, so why did they insist on hiring old and ugly ones like us? I was still trying to figure it out when I climbed on top of him. Suddenly I heard another man laugh. It made me jump. It was only then I realized there was a curtain beside the bed and a person sitting behind it. Everyone's heart was in their throats. I realized he'd been sitting behind the curtain all along, Cece continued. The moment he laughed, the man on the bed began to struggle. He threw me off him and rolled off the bed, and that person only laughed harder. As he laughed, he said, Father, I've brought you the women you love so much. There are so many of them. Aren't you happy? Everyone felt their hair stand on end. Although those words had been spoken by Cece, their minds could clearly picture them coming from another's ever-smiling mouth. Jingguang Yao. And the half-dead man on the bed must have been Jingguang Shan. Jingguang Shan's death had always been an open secret among the clans. The man had been a philanderer his whole life, to the extent it was almost obscene. Almost. He left a trail of lovers and offspring in his wake across the land, and even the cause of his death was related to this hobby. Despite being the head of the Jin clan of Lanling, he insisted on making merry with women even as his health deteriorated. Eventually, he died in the middle of intercourse, which was too undignified a death to announce to the public. After suffering the painful loss of her only son and daughter-in-law, Madame Jin had already been depressed for several years. And then she learned that her husband had not only not stopped fooling around, but even thrown his life away in the process. This infuriated her so much that she fell ill and passed away not long after. The Jin clan of Lanling attempted to cover up what happened, but everyone knew the truth. On the surface, they sighed with grief and regret, but in reality, they all thought that it served him right. He deserved to die in such a way. Who could have dreamed they'd hear an even uglier and more revolting truth today? Sharp intakes of breath rose and fell one after another in Sword Hall. The middle-aged man wanted to shout and struggle, but he had no strength left in him, Cece carried on. The boy who had let us inside opened the door again and entered the room. He dragged the man back onto the bed, laughing cheekily all the while. Then he trussed him up, tied him down, and braced his foot against his head as he tightened the rope. He told us to continue, to not stop, even if he died. None of us had ever seen anything like it. We were scared to death, but we didn't dare disobey, so we kept going. By the 11th or 12th round, the sister attending to him suddenly screamed that he was dead. I went up to take a look. He really wasn't breathing, but the man behind the curtain said, "Didn't you hear your orders? Don't stop, even if he dies." Sect leader Ouyang couldn't help but say, "No matter what, Jin Guangshan was his father by blood. If this is true, it's really too... When I saw he was dead, I knew it was over," Cece said. "We wouldn't be escaping that house either. And just as I suspected, every single one of my 20 or so sisters was killed once the night was done. No one else was spared." "Why did they spare you and only you?" Wei Wuxian asked. "I don't know," Cece answered. "I pleaded and begged for my life, told them I didn't want the money anymore, and I'd never say a word about this. I never thought they would actually would spare me. They took me to a house and locked me up for 11 years. It's only recently that I was saved by a stroke of luck and got out of there." "Who saved you?" Wei Wuxian asked. "I don't know," Cece replied. "I never met the person who saved me face to face, but after my savior heard my story, they decided they didn't want to allow that immoral hypocrite to keep lying to the world. Even if that man has hoodwinked the masses, my savior is determined to expose his deeds and bring justice to his victims. Those 20 or so poor sisters of mine may yet be able to rest in peace." "Do you have any evidence to back up what you've said?" Wei Wuxian asked. Cece hesitated for a moment, then said, "No. But if I told a single lie, let my corpse rot without even a mat to wrap it in." Sect leader Yao immediately piped up. "She spoke in such clear detail, she's definitely not lying." Len Qiren's brow was locked in a tight furrow. He turned to the other woman. "I seem to have met you before." With a panic-stricken look, the woman said, Most likely." Everyone was taken aback. Cece was a street prostitute, so could this woman be one as well? How could Lan Qiren have met her before? "I often accompanied my madam when the..." Wow, I suddenly forgot how to pronounce that. "I often accompanied my madam when the Qin clan of Lao Ling hosted symposiums," the woman said. "The Qin clan of Lao Ling?" the female cultivator asked. "You're a maid from the Qin clan of Lao Ling?" A more sharp-eyed female cultivator addressed her directly by name. "You're Bicao. Madam Qin's handmaid, Bicao, right? Am I saying that right? Bicao? Bicao, or would that be more like Bisao?" "No, Bicao." Eh? Hang on. Let me see. If you guys don't know, maybe I'll be able to Bisao? Yeah? We'll go with Bisao. That sounds... Bisao also makes sense. Considering... we'll go with... Oh, look, I just literally opened it right there. Oh, it's kind of a combination. Yeah. That was the combination I meant. It's hard to make. Ooh, okay, so that would be... Bisao? Bisao? Ooh, you know, we're gonna try, and it's gonna be painful, but I'm a filthy American. And right off the bat, this thing gonna be pretty. The Madame Qin she spoke of was Qin Guangyi's wife, and also the mother of Qin Su, Qin Guangyao's wife. Bisao. You know, we're gonna try. We're going to do our best. Bisao nodded, but I'm no longer with the Qin clan. Greatly excited, Sect Leader Yao slapped the table and stood up. You have something to tell us too, right? With reddened eyes, Bisao said, the tale I've come here to tell took place a little earlier than the previous one, about 12 or 13 years ago. I served my madam for many years, and I watched my young miss grow up. Madam always cared deeply for Miss Su, but was in a bad mood in the days leading up to Miss Su's marriage. She had nightmares every night and would spontaneously weep during the day. I thought it was because her daughter was about to be married and she couldn't bear to part with her, so I kept comforting her, telling her that Miss Su's future husband, Le Fangjun Jin Guangyao, was a promising young man. He was gentle, considerate, and devoted. She would have a blessed life. But surprisingly, Madame only looked more upset at my words. When the wedding day neared, Madame suddenly told me one night that she was going to see Miss Su's future husband, and she was going immediately. She wanted me to accompany her in secret. I told her, why not summon him here instead? Why sneak out in the middle of the night to meet a young man? Imagine the horrible rumors if anyone were to find out. But Madame was determined, so I had no choice but to go with her. When we arrived, Madame told me to keep watch outside and not go in. I didn't hear anything, and I don't know what exactly she said to Jin Guangyao. All I know is that a few days later, Miss Su's wedding day was set, and Madame fainted the moment she saw the invitation. Even after the wedding, Madame remained in low spirits. Her distress made her fall ill, and her condition worsened. Right before she passed away, she couldn't take it anymore. She told me everything. Bisao wept as she continued. Lei Fengjun, Qin Guangyao, and our Miss Su, how are they husband and wife? They are brother and sister. What? Even if heavenly thunder had struck Sword Hall at that moment, it would not have been as shockingly impactful as that single statement. Chinsu's pale face surfaced in Wei Wuxian's mind. Oh, my poor madam, Bisao lamented. Old sect leader Jin was an animal. He lusted after my madam's beauty and forced himself on her one night when he was drunk. How could madam have been capable of fighting off his advances? She didn't dare speak out after the fact, either. She was too terrified to even try, since the master of the house was loyal to that man. Jin Guangshang didn't remember whose daughter Miss Su was, but my madam could never forget. She didn't dare go to Jin Guangshang, but knowing that Miss Su was in love with Jin Guangyao, she was conflicted for a very long time before she finally went to him in secret before the wedding day. She revealed some of the truth to him and begged him to think of some way to cancel the wedding, telling him they mustn't commit such a grave mistake. Who would have thought that Jin Guangyao would still marry Miss Su despite knowing she was his younger half-sister? Even more frightening, he hadn't just married her, but also had a child with her. What an earth-shattering scandal! It knocks me over every goddamn time. Voices rose in wave after wave of discussion, each surging louder than the last. How many years had old sect leader Qin served Jin Guangshan? To think he'd even lay a hand on the wife of a longtime subordinate. Had Jin Guangshan. In the end, there is no secret in the world that can be kept forever. If Jin Guangyao wanted to gain a firm foothold in the Jin clan of Lanling, he had to have a solid father and my brain. If Jin Guangyao wanted to gain a firm foothold in the Jin clan of Lanling, he had to have a solid father-in-law like Qin Kangye to give him a boost. How could he not marry her? He's a maniac without equal in all the world, and they don't even know the half of it. No wonder he told Chinsu that Ah Song had to die back when they were in the secret chamber, Wei Wuxian whispered to Lan Wangji. A few others in Sword Hall also thought of Ah Song. Knowing this, I would wager his son was not actually assassinated by any outside party, and that he did the deed with his own hands, Sect Leader Yao said. How so? In all likelihood, a child born to close siblings will be dull-witted, Sect Leader Yao analyzed. Jinru Song died when he was a few years old, coincidentally right around the time when a child would start their schooling. While no one would notice anything amiss when he was extremely young, the ways in which he was different from ordinary people would be exposed as he grew older. Though no one would immediately suspect blood ties between the parents, Jin Guangyao siring a feeble-minded child would inevitably cause others to gossip and criticize, to say the child only turned out that way because he has the filthy blood of a prostitute running in his veins. The crowd felt this made great sense. Sect Leader Yao is so sharp, Sect Leader Yao added. Besides, the one who poisoned Jinru Song just so happened to be a family head who opposed Jin Guangyao's construction of the observation towers. Can there be such a coincidence? He sneered. In any case, he had no need for a son who was very possibly an idiot. Kill Jinru Song, frame that family head for it, and openly crusade against the clan who refused to yield to him in the name of avenging his son. Although it was cold-blooded, he killed 2 birds with 1 stone. Quite literally. What a truly devious ploy, Lan Fangjun. Wei Wuxian turned to Bisao. On the night of the recent symposium at Golden Carp Tower, did you meet with Chinsu? Bisao was taken aback. Wei Wuxian continued to probe. That night, in Fragrance Palace, Chinsu and Jin Guangyao had an argument. She said she'd met with someone who told her some things and given her a letter. And also that this someone would never lie to her. Was it you? It was me, Bisao confirmed. You guarded this secret for so many years, Wei Wuxian said. Why did you decide to tell her so suddenly? And why the equally sudden decision to reveal it to us? Because, Bisao began, I had to let Miss Su know what kind of person her husband is. And I didn't want to make it public at first, but then Miss Su inexplicably committed suicide at Golden Carp Tower. I must expose this beast in human clothing and get justice, for my madam as well as my young miss, whom I watched grow up. Wei Wuxian smiled. But did you never consider the blow you would deal her by revealing the truth to her? Or are you really that clueless? Chinsu committed suicide specifically because you told her about this. Bisao started. I don't agree with you, Sect Leader Yao said with displeasure. Are you saying hiding the truth is the right thing to do? Someone immediately spoke up in agreement. You can't throw blame around like that. Madam Jin, Chinsu was simply too fragile. Poor Chinsu, several older female cultivators agreed. I even envied her once. What blessed fortune, I thought. Born into a good family, married a good man, the one and only mistress of Golden Carp Tower, with a husband who was wholeheartedly devoted to her. Who knew that things that seem beautiful on the surface are always riddled with flaws beneath? There's nothing to envy at all, the wife of one of the cultivators present commented in an aloof manner, although she was pretty damn right. Chinsu probably chose to kill herself because she couldn't endure this kind of gossip, Wei Wuxian thought to himself. It sounds like sympathy on the surface, but really, it's just gloating. He looked down, suddenly noticing a bracelet of jade and gold on Bisao's wrist. It was of excellent quality, certainly not something a handmaid could afford. Nice bracelet you've got there, he said with a smile. Bisao hurriedly pulled down her sleeves and lowered her head, saying nothing. But, Ni Huasong said blankly, who exactly sent these two here? I hate her. I hate her. I fucking hate her. How? Oh, Why dwell on this? Sect leader Yao said. No matter who he is, we can be sure of one thing. He is a righteous man who is definitely on our side. That's big. That's a big leap. Cheers of agreement instantly rang out. That's right. But Wei Wuxian said, Miss Cici's savior is certainly no ordinary man. He's rich and has a lot of free time on his hands. But righteous? Who knows? Many of the details are dubious, Lan Wangji said. If Wei Wuxian had been the one to utter those words, not many people would have paid him much mind. But since the speaker was Lan Wangji, the crowd immediately quieted down. Dubious in what way? Lan Qiren asked. Too many ways, Wei Wuxian replied. For instance, Jing Guangyao is vicious and ruthless, so why did he kill 20 people but spare Cici? We have a witness, but where's the material evidence? He kept voicing dissenting opinions, which set him at odds with the mounting public indignation. Some people present were already showing signs of displeasure. The net of heaven is vast, but it lets nothing through, Sect Leader Yao declared in a booming voice. Wei Wuxian smiled at this and said no more. He was aware no one would listen to what he had to say right now, and no one would carefully consider his doubts. If he said any more, they'd probably start targeting him again. Had he been the person he was a decade ago, he would have simply ignored them and said his piece anyway, forcing them to listen whether they wanted to or not. But Wei Wuxian no longer had any interest in stealing the limelight. Wave after wave of condemnation crashed over the room, each higher and louder than the last. Oh, we love the, gross. I can't believe this man is so ungrateful. That maniac. The words ungrateful and maniac had been almost synonymous with Wei Wuxian's name for more than a decade, so when he heard them uttered, he thought at first they were cursing him again. It was a while before he realized they weren't. The people doing the cursing were the same, as was the vocabulary they used, but the subject of their abuse was different, and he was unaccustomed to the change in targets. Ow. Ow. I mean, they're at least pointing at the right person this time, even though they're only half sure that they're pointing it at the right person. But I love that this very this really kind of subtly, even though it's right there on the page, you know, just draws the same it's not a parallel, but it essentially makes the connection that, like, they will aim their vitriol at whatever, but it's just the same vitriol. But like a broken clock is right twice a day, you know? I think MXTX had things to say about gossip and unfounded rumors and circumstantial evidence. I don't know. That's just the impression I get. Following right after, someone said, in the past, Jing Guangyao climbed to the top one step at a time, only by ingratiating himself with Chu Fengjun and Zhou Jun. How else could the son of a prostitute sit in his seat today? To think he would murder Chu Fengjun so viciously. And Sewajun is in his clutches right now. I just hope nothing bad happens to him. At first, none of them had believed Nin Mingzhu's death and dismemberment had anything to do with Jin Guangyao, nor had they believed his involvement with the corpses sieging the burial mounds. But now, they suddenly did. You see what I mean? You see what I mean? They suddenly, just so suddenly. Partially for good reason, and then yet still so suddenly. It wasn't just his sworn brothers. His blood brothers got it even worse. He spent the last few years before Jin Guangshan's death busily clearing the land of his father's illegitimate sons for fear that someone would suddenly pop out of nowhere and challenge him for the position. Mo Xuanyu was probably one of the lucky ones. Had he not gone crazy and been booted back home, he would likely have ended up disappearing like the others. He must have had something to do with Jin Zixuan's death too. Anyone here still remember Shaoxing Chen? Bright moon, cool breeze, ever distant Shaoxing Chen. In the case of the Chang clan of Yu Yang, Lin Fingjun was the one who did all he could to preserve the life of the culprit, Xu Yang. Didn't many clans invite Shaoxing Chen Daozheng to be their guest cultivator when he first descended from the mountain? The Jin clan of Lanling certainly did, but he politely turned them down. They were rather full of themselves at the time, though, weren't they? Being rejected by a minor Taoist cultivator was a loss of face. That old grudge must have been one of the reasons the Jin clan of Lanling later protected Xu Yang. At any rate, they just wanted to see Shaoxing Chen's story come to a tragic end. Who do they think they are? Making you pay if you don't join them? I mean, that sounds awful Wen-like to me, but, Alas, what a pity. I had the privilege of witnessing Shaoxing Chen Daozheng in his full glory during a night hunt. Shuanghua was a sword that shook the world. Don't bring up Shaoxing Chen, okay? Jin Guangyao later got rid of Xu Yang. What a perfect example of dog biting dog. I heard Jin Guangyao didn't go undercover in the Wen clan of Qishan with honest intentions. He planned to stay with the Wen clan if the Sunshot campaign did not go well, being Wen Rohan's toady and helping him do his evil deeds. But if the Wens fell from power, he would double-cross them and play the hero. Wen Rohan's probably rolling in his grave. He considered Jin Guangyao his trusted aide and trained him as such. Most of Jin Guangyao's sword techniques were taught to him by Wen Rohan. That's nothing. I heard Chu Fengjun's surprise attack on the Wens failed because he deliberately provided fake intel. I'll share a secret too. Wait a minute. Yeah, no, that ties into he helped out, my husband by giving him good intel, but he didn't totally play the double. No, I got you. I understand. I'll share a secret too. Wasn't the money and material for the construction of his observation towers fleeced from various families? All the clans contributed manpower as well. I heard he always secretly kept about this much for himself. Oh, good lord, that much? How utterly shameless. Here, I thought he genuinely wanted to accomplish something. All our good faith's gone to the dogs. Wei Wuxian found this all a bit hilarious. If they're just rumors, why so quick to believe them? If they're secrets, how would you even know of them? This was not the first time these rumors had spread. While Jin Guangyao was in power, they had been suppressed so well that no one took them seriously. But tonight, the rumors all seemed to have become hard facts with irrefutable evidence. They became a solid foundation for Jin Guangyao's multitude of crimes, proving just how unscrupulous he was. So it seems that this Jin guy killed his father, his brothers, his wife, his son, his master, his friends, and even committed incest. How terrifying. The Jin clan of Lanling is arrogant and overbearing, and Jin Guangyao is even worse in his dictatorial ways. He never listens to what others have to say, and now he's ushered in this awful trend of decadence and rank pulling. Does he really think we'll tolerate this outrage forever? This outrage that you drummed up about 30 seconds ago? He probably felt threatened by the other clan's continued growth and expansion of power over the years. He feared he would be deposed, just like the one clan of Qishen was in the past. And that's why he decided to go all the way and wipe us out in one fell swoop, right? Sect Leader Yao sneered. In that case, we'll make his worst fears come true. He smacked the table. We'll attack Golden Carp Tower. She just illustrated how that all whipped up into a definitive attack in no time. Shit. Wow. Amid the roaring cheers in the hall, Wei Wuxian thought, before today, this terrifying figure was still the Le Fangjun whom everyone unanimously praised. Now in the course of just one... Okay. It did seem to dip out for a second. But it reconnected and it should be fine. Yeah? Just for a second. And honestly, that was just one time through the whole thing. That's not bad. Having it on 720 definitely seems to work. So, where did it cut off? Where did it start buffering? Probably only a couple of lines back. Or was I still in the middle of reeling after the whole, let's attack Golden Carp Tower? Let me see. Actually, you know, this is a good opportunity since it's 5. Let's go ahead, depending on... Suddenly? Oh, perfect. Okay, right at where we'll stop, where it says, suddenly, someone standing at the side of the room turned around. Mr. Wei, Jing Guangyao has the Yin Tiger tally in his clutches. We're counting on you to deal with this. Huh? Wei Wuxian blurted. And that is where we'll end. Because now, all of a sudden, they're asking for his help after he had to come back from... Yeah. All right. So, it's 5 p.m. We, holy crap. Once again, dead ass right on the money. We did 40 pages. Go us. So we're towards the bottom of page 232. And, oh yeah, we're coming into the home stretch. I'm so sad. When does volume 5 come out? I think I had to put it on I think it got pushed back to like May or something, didn't it? May? Yeah, I think it's like really early May. Yeah. Yeah. Oh, one page in the part. Oh my god, no, you're right. Sorry, I tried to look ahead and I did not. I must have accidentally skipped a page. I didn't realize it ended in like a page and a half. Okay, hang on. Uno mas, one more page. Okay. Bottom of 232. He hadn't expected anyone to take the initiative to talk to him, let alone so enthusiastically. What was more, they had even used Mr. rather than disparaging names like Trader Wei, Wei Dog, or the like. He was a little stunned. I'm sure as shit not at this point. Another clan leader chimed in as well. That's right, no one can rival the Yilling Patriarch in this area. I'd make a motion with my hand, but I don't know. I'm pretty sure it would violate the YouTube TOS. Jing Guangyao bit off more than he could chew with this. For a moment, Wei Wuxian was left speechless. The last time the masses had heaped praise on him and fawned over him like this had been during the Sunshot campaign over a decade ago. Even though he'd managed to hang in there until someone else finally replaced him as public enemy number 1, Wei Wuxian did not feel moved by the world finally accepting him. Even after all the bitterness he'd suffered, this did not taste sweet. He couldn't help but wonder deep down, Was it like this too back then? A bunch of them gathering somewhere to have a secret meeting, working themselves into a frenzy, then ultimately deciding to besiege the burial mounds? Yes! By the time the meeting ended, the Jang clan of Young Mung's banquet hall was prepared to receive them too. But when the feast began, there were 2 figures missing. One of the clan leaders wondered, why are Wei, the Yilling Patriarch, and Han Wangjun missing? Jang Chung, sitting in the head seat, asked the guest cultivator beside him, where are they? After leaving the inner hall, the 2 gentlemen went to change clothes and stated they won't be joining the feast. Oh, really? The guest cultivator replied. Instead, they're going for a walk and will return later, you say to me now. Jing Chung snorted. Still the same old, no manners. His criticism seemed to include Lan Wangji, which made Lan Qiren appear displeased. If Lan Wangji was accused of having no manners, there was no such thing as manners in the world. At this thought, he gritted his teeth at Wei Wuxian once more. Jing Chung schooled his expression and addressed the room politely. Please begin your meal, everyone. I will invite them back later. Oh, okay. Oh, and see, part 3 picks up with their leisurely stroll. This is the place we get to start on Tuesday. Part 3 of chapter 19, the very top of page 235, on their long stroll. Oh my god, an even worse cliffhanger than I thought I was leaving us on. Okay, so that's it. That's it for the stream today. Thank you for tuning in. I hope you had a good time, considering the content that was discussed. But you know, MXTX technically always a good time, even when it's a bad time or a gross time or a horrific time. It's always a time, you know? It's always an experience. So, I had a fabulous time. We will pick this up on Tuesday, and I believe actually between next Tuesday and Thursday should be about when we finish, if we're on page 235. And oh, actually, no, incorrect. No, that's right. Sorry. Wow, math really failed in my head just then. We're at 235, and there's, just glancing at the page number, 319 pages total. So, yeah. Within just, by Thursday, we will be done with this volume. Holy crap. Holy crap. Okay. So, that is it for this chunk of the story. I will see you guys on Tuesday. Thank you so much for tuning in. It was a pleasure reading with you. And I will see you on Tuesday, same time, for apparently Wangji and Wuxian going on a long walk together. At the very least. We don't know. We'll find out on Tuesday. I will see you guys then. Please, please, please take care of yourself. Bye, guys.